Ladies and gentlemen, we're a little bit late, but we're here. We're live from the Omnia fishing headquarters in Golden Valley, Minnesota. We were going to have Patrick Walters on. That little hold up there was we were having some audio issues. He's got an old phone. Nothing's working on his end, so we're blaming this completely on him. But tonight we're talking reels, and some deals. Mostly about reels tonight. I want to point out the fact that we are going to be giving away some gift cards tonight. So make sure if any of you like and share this post, you're paying attention towards the end there. We're gonna draw a winner for that. We're gonna give away a winner for liking and sharing this stream. And then we're also going to give away some $50 gift cards for good questions that are asked. So we're asking for some questions. We want this to be pretty conversational if possible. What we want to talk about is basically reels from all the different price points, kind of our journeys in reels, how we've come along. We're going to start off with casting stuff. We'll get into some spinning towards the end. It's a little bit easier to kind of roll through the spinning stuff. The casting equipment can be a little bit more confusing for a lot of people out there, a little bit harder to justify those bigger spends. Not for me, not for Kip, not for Brad, but it can be confusing if you're new consumer to the casting reel market. It's a weird jump from spinning into casting equipment. And so I kind of broke out the casting reel family into a whole bunch of different families, and I'm going to bring in some of the guys here from Omnia, like Kip Youngquist, who's to my right here. He is our head of CSRs. He's our head customer service representative. So Kip is the one who helps out a lot of you, and his team helps out any of you guys that you have any issues whatsoever with orders. If you guys are reaching out on the hello chat, all that's Kip's team, making sure you guys are all happy with what you're getting and can get any of your questions answered. Then I got Brad Novak over here.
Howdy.
You guys all know Brad. Brad's always been the brains of this operation, running it. We've demoted him now to just being somebody on the call with us to hang out with me because he got a different job. He's now doing all of our analytics. So he got promoted and he's cooler than a lot of us now, and he's got a cool job. So we actually brought up our buddy Matt Fergus to come and be the man behind the board back there. He's going to be punching all the buttons and making sure your questions come through, and all this is working live tonight. So thank you to all you guys for joining in tonight for the live stream. I'm going to start it off real quick going through some of the budget reels. I think best for bang for your buck reels that we're selling here at Omnia right now. But before I get into that, I want to talk about why we asked Kip to be on tonight. See, Kip is our resident Shimano guy. I'd be our resident Daiwa guy. And
that's a lot of heat for it, too.
Yeah, he does. I beat him up about it quite regularly. Brad, even though he's wearing the Daiwa sweatshirt tonight, is probably the best person here to answer your questions if you got like, hey, I don't care about brand. I don't care about any of that stuff. I want the best deal and the best performer because I just care about catching fish, not about looking fancy.
And I choose my sweatshirts like I choose my reels. I kind of just get what I just
so
take what I
I'm pretty
get.
sure I got him that sweatshirt at one point. But anyway, Kip's into real high-end stuff, older reels too. He like tracks down some of the famous Shimano reels. So if you guys get Shimano reel questions, he's a good person to ask on that. And my background came from actually working with Daiwa for a while, so I was a big Daiwa guy. But this year, I'm doing something a little different. Now that I'm here at Omnia, I'm going to take this year with the supply chain freeing up a little bit. We've seen it get a little better, as you can see by some of the outs on our site with some reels. It's still a little tough, but with it getting better, I'm going to be trying all reels in that 200 price point and down from all the different manufacturers, kind of finding what I think is the best budget reels on the market that are still high-end performers that could keep up for you tournament anglers and just hardcore anglers in general. So I'm holding the loose skip and pitch reel in my hand right now that I've actually already got a few of to try for this year. But Kip, do you want to start off with what, in your opinion, is some of the best bang for the buck bait casters on the market right now in your mind? And I mean, not just in general for all of our customers, like for you. You're making a purchase, bang for your buck, casting reels. What do you think is that price range for bang for your buck, by the way? And what reels fall into that
That's
category?
a good point that you brought up, price point. I think once you get into around $100 is when you start getting some of the features that make a more quality reel. For Shimano, any of the SLX reels are going to be good bang for the buck. They've got pretty much the same braking system as your high-end reels. Maybe a little bit different frame, not as smooth, but to go out, catch fish, get the job done, the SLX line is going to be great.
Yeah.
And then I know a lot of you guys have been liking the Daiwa CT.
Yep.
A ton. And the Tatula CT.
Tatula CTs, yep.
And I don't know a ton about that reel, but held it a few times, played with it. It's butter smooth, pretty lightweight, and I think around $130.
I think it's something like that.
Yeah, I think it's $119.99 or $129.99. I can't remember. I think it's $129.99.
So if I were on the market for a
that's a
budget reel,
Steez right there. That one's $800.
Yeah, don't get that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kip's
SLX
idea of a
one.
budget reel is at $800 Steez CT. So Brad, to Kip's point, what do you think price point is on a good price point?
Ooh, a good price point.
Like when you think bang to your buck, what are you thinking bang to the buck is? Bang for your buck.
Like price point, I'm thinking
Yeah.
130.
130.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
all right.
130 nowadays. Now, when I was first starting, to get into bait casters and things like that, price point was $50 for me.
That's what I was saying. I teed it up to you because you're supposed to.
Now it's like 130, but honestly, when I first got started, Pete made me bring this in.
Yeah. I want to point this out to everybody.
So this is my very first Bass Pro Shops tourney special, $50. I bought it with a 6.6 medium.
Yeah.
Tourney special rod, $100 out the door.
Rod
Perfect.
and reel.
Now the funny thing about this is actually my second tourney special.
Okay.
The first one that I bought, first one that I bought, I returned it
Why?
because I couldn't cast without backlashing.
Oh, really?
So I was constantly.
Kip would have returned it if it had a scratch on it.
So I honestly I wanted to get into bait casters. So I was like, well, I'm not going to invest a bunch of money into it if I'm just learning.
Yeah,
I went with the cheapest one I could find.
Okay.
Bass Pro Shops tourney special, $50. Little did I know that actually, if I would have gotten the $130 range, I would have learned how to cast a bait caster a lot easier.
You went there without me having to go there, and
Yeah.
that's what I appreciate. The hardest conversation you can have in retail sometimes when you're dealing with somebody that's making that transition from spinning into casting tackle is it is not really worth it to go under $100 in casting. If you're not comfortable spending $100 on a reel, don't buy a casting reel. I would suggest you throw a spinnerbait with a spinning rod. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm not saying because there's not decent ones out there, but there's really not.
I can't think of a bigger one.
We've had a hard time even here trying to find some that we don't see a higher return rate on. The problem is casting reels require braking systems to help you get used to learn how to cast, and they don't really start getting efficient till you get to that. Where Brad just said, actually, that like $130 price point, you start going up from there. You get into some Shimano's SLXs, the Daiwas with the Tatulas. Luz has got the LFS reels around $100 that are starting to get like really, really popular. You're going to find yourself being a lot happier spending that kind of money on a casting reel. When you're ready to spend that kind of money, you're going to get a much better reel. Kip's playing with one right there. Is that the old Sitica?
It is. Yeah.
What did that thing run?
I'm not going to get it right. I'm back in retail. I want to say, inflation and everything. I think it was like $80 when it came out. That was back in 2008, 2009.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. But these things are pretty sweet for the price. Like this is replaced by the SLX now. The last Sitica was the I.
Yeah.
But back when they made the Sitica E, which is that one, they were still made in Japan. So for around $100, you're getting a reel.
Japanese made reel, yeah.
Yeah, they're bulletproof. So that's why I like those old ones.
Yeah, and that brings up a big subject when it comes to casting reels. So now we're going to get a little bit more nerded out on casting reels here when we get into country of origin. So that but does lead me into to the next segment here on as we talk about this. So bang for your buck, as you heard there, like Kip got started with the Sidicas of the world and things like that. Brad went really price point, found out that he should have probably jumped up to that next price point mark to get really happy with his casting reel performance. For me, I did similar to Brad. I bought a really, really inexpensive one, hated casting reels, didn't buy one for a while. Then I just went stupid and I bought really expensive ones for a long time and kind of been working my way back a little bit, believe it or not, for a while. But something that you should pay attention to as a consumer, in my opinion, is never go off ball bearing count. That is really smoke and mirrors. You've heard that a lot from a lot of other people. I'm not saying any secrets there, but quality of ball bearings differs immensely. So that a 5 ball bearing reel from one manufacturer, a 3 ball bearing reel from one manufacturer to a 10 ball bearing reel from another manufacturer could be completely different levels of quality. And I'm saying superior quality on the lower ball bearing count reel if they've got really high end stainless steel ball bearings. You'll probably hear us talk about that Japanese manufacturing that Kip spoke about a little bit earlier as we go through all the different segments of reels tonight, because Japanese manufacturing has been kind of the pinnacle of casting reel manufacturing anyway out there in the marketplace. They take a lot of care into the manufacturing process. All the different components of the reel are really machined at a high level. Daiwa and Shimano are both known. They cold forge their gears, so they have really, really high end gearing. We're seeing some of the Korean manufacturers surprise the whole marketplace with their quality of the aluminum gearing that they're doing. Their aluminum gearing from the Korean manufacturers is catching up to the quality of the aluminum manufacturing you're seeing from the Japanese manufacturers. So it's definitely not the way to shop for your reels, just looking at the country of origin, but just pay attention to sometimes you're looking at price points. That could be a huge factor in where the reel's manufactured, could be a big difference in how much the reel costs. But after we were talking about the bang for your buck reels, a couple I wanted to point out before we move on to the next one is what we've seen here sales wise, what people tend to like is up in that price point that Kip brought up and that Brad brought up. We see the volume and what most of our consumers view as best bang for your buck being around that $200 price range and up a little higher. We sell a ton of BB1 Pros, Shimano Corrado MGL 150s.
50.
That's been a hot reel for us. I know Shimano hasn't talked about that reel a whole bunch. I think due to manufacturing constraints with all the stuff going on in the world, but that thing's a stunner. You got that one right there, Kip? Can you pick that up? Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Fergus. This reel right here is probably one of the more impressive reels I've picked up from Shimano in a long time for being in the bang for the buck category. They got a lot of really awesome high-end stuff, but this thing's got a tiny little frame, easy to palm. I love the nose piece on the front for a guy who puts his finger in front of the reel like I do. It features the MGL spool, which Kip can get into a little bit about that. You want to tell him about what the MGL spool does?
For sure. So MGL stands for Magnum Light, and all that really is, they make it sound like this big science, but all it really is the spool is heavily ported. So you can see on that picture there that the spool has a bunch of holes in it. A standard spool from Shimano is going to have less holes and smaller holes. So what that does is it makes the spool lighter. And in theory, a lighter spool is going to start up faster, which will lead to a further cast. They can be a little bit squirrely because they start up fast, so you might have to be a little bit quicker with your thumb, but you can make some pretty far casts with that.
So on that topic, because you got to bring up a great point there, the lighter the spool, the quicker the startup inertia is. Shimano is known for their centripetal braking systems. So how they work is based off spool speed. Weights kind of go to the outside of the spool. Think of somebody spinning around on like a tire swing when you're a kid. You put your legs in and out, it changes the speed of how fast you're spinning around. That same theory is how they slow their spools down with their braking systems. Daiwa is known for more of a magnetic system. It's a little bit combined with centrifugal force as well, but it's using the magnetic force to slow down the spool. So what I've found from my personal experience is Shimano's tend to cast a little bit further because of those centrifugal brakes, where Daiwa tends to have a little bit more control in that early part of the cast that he's talking about, because those magnets don't require spool speed to start affecting the braking on the spool. So that one right there, I'm going to tell you right now, I think it might not have a lot of thunder out there as far as marketing power behind it, but we're already seeing it in the sales. We're seeing it in the return purchases. People who've bought one are buying more. I know Kip bought one already.
Yeah. Had to try it out.
Yeah, everybody's a fan of that thing. So I think that's a huge one. Our best-selling bait caster here falls into this category as well, and that's volume-wise. That is the Tatula SV103.
Before we move on to the Tatula, Randy wants to know, is that the newest Shimano out?
No. There's the Bantam, the new Bantam MGL, which we haven't gotten in yet. We did just put it on the site, so sign up for those restock notifications. We'll hopefully get them in soon.
Yes, but this is the newest version of the Corrado that is out, if you're interested. But the Tatula SV103 that Fergus just put up on the screen there for you guys, that's our best-selling baitcaster. We sell piles of those things. In my opinion, I've now, especially over the last couple of years, been throwing a bunch of other reels too. I still will say right now, if you're a beginner to baitcasters and you can float a $200 reel, or wait around till you can get a deal on one of those, that's probably one of the easiest reels to get used to casting with. It's probably the most forgiving bait caster, in my opinion, on the market, as far as being able to cast without backlashing. You sacrifice distance compared to the Corrado DC or that MGL that Kip was just talking about, but the amount of control on that reel is really, it features, if you look next to the drag star in the picture there, on the handle side, there's a drag star right behind the handle, and then right next to that is the tension knob. And most of the times, in most bait casters, you'd want to set that tension pretty tight when you're learning how to use a reel so that your bait barely falls when you push the thumb bar down. With this particular reel, you don't want to touch that thing. It's called a zero adjust. It's already preset from the factory, very tight. And all you're going to do is turn the dial that's on the opposite side from the handle that has numbers up to 20 on it. If you start with that number really high, you won't be able to cast very far at all. I'm talking across the living room you're sitting in if you're watching this in the living room.
Okay, then why do they have it? So Patrick yelled at me for that.
Yeah.
Patrick likes all of his stuff loose. I picked one up, bird nest, first cast, and then what do? I go to that knob because I like every other reel, you just tightened it.
Yep.
So why is that one? Why do they even have it if you don't?
That's a great point. Now, there's that Daiwa got a lot of pushback when that feature came out, actually. But the truth is that spool material is so light and that brake is so aggressive, you'll actually get the maximum performance out of that reel with that spool tension tight. The magnetic brake on the side will do all the work you need it to do. That 0 through 20 adjustment that's on that opposite side from the handle I'm talking about, that's just numbers on the side of the reel. You turn this dial, that'll do the most if that's tight. Now, people who grew up using a baitcaster have a super, we call it educated thumb. You're used to controlling that spool with your thumb. They want that really loose so that their thumb is dictating how far their cast went and how much line's ripping off that reel. Where the SV was actually designed to be to get its peak performance out of using that magnetic brake to decide. So, for example, if I took the Sitka or this, actually, this is not a good one to talk about that with, but that Sitka that Kip was holding up earlier, and I loosened that tension knob all the way back, and I troll motored up to a dock, and I fired at it as hard as I could, and I didn't touch the spool with my thumb, I'm done. It's backlashing like nobody's business. I'm done. With that Tatula SV, I'm not kidding you. You could go up there with that brake on 20, fire it as hard as you can, and never touch the spool with your thumb, and you're not going to backlash it. So that's why they have it on there. And the reason for the zero adjust is to make it so that it doesn't accidentally get bumped around. But you can still turn that dial, as you learned, it's just really hard to turn it. They don't want you turning it, but if you want to turn it, so if you're a Patrick Walters that grew up fishing with all his reels super loose, you can back those all the way off. But the point is to make it easier for everybody who wants to make really hard casts with light lures.
You mean you're not supposed to touch your thumb on the spool right when it hits the water so you don't backlash?
You can't. You don't have to.
That's
with
the only way
SV.
that I cast it.
I still do. So then that's why the beauty of that reel, that 0 through 20 adjustment, I can back it down to like 10, get more distance.
Okay.
And I now I have to use my thumb a little bit, but it's only pretty much towards the end of the cast.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can make hard. I've got buddies that literally have learned how to use a bait caster with the Tula SV, and I mean snap casts off as hard as they can, and you never see them backlash ever because they're used to that reel and they're used to the adjustments on it. And I think it's a beautiful system. And if you struggle with bait casters at all, it's definitely worth trying that Tatula SV. If you want to do hard stuff like skipping a Senko weightless or throwing a spinnerbait in a super windy day, the SV is going to be your friend. If you do have a bit of an educated thumb, you might like that MGL a little bit better in that same price point because you're going to get a little bit more casting distance out of it. I think that SV does a good job of doing both, being a versatile reel. That's what SV stands for, by the way. It's stress-free versatile. So it's supposed to make it easy to fish, but it's still versatile enough to still throw a spinnerbait, but you can skip a weightless Senko. So enough on those two, but those two are both in that bang for your buck category. I did mention real quick the Lose BB1 Pro. I'm saying that because we're seeing those things rocket off. We're selling them like crazy here. That's a distance chucker. That's a chunk and wine reel. If you're looking to wind baits, you have an educated thumb like we were talking about before. That thing's an absolute bomber, and that thing's coming in that around that price point. Another one to really quick mention before we move on to out of that category is the Revo STX. Reason why I bring that one up right now too, especially, is because when we started onboarding the Pure Fishing reels, the Abu Garcia reels, we were told by all their pros that we work with in some form or fashion, the STX is the workhorse. The STX is the workhorse. These right now, tonight, and over the next few days, I'm not sure when we're going to end it, are marked down from, I think, $220 was their regular retail. Got them down to $159.99, I believe, right now. So it's a screaming deal. What's that?
$159.
$159.99. There you go. If you're looking for that bang for your buck category type reel, that's a screaming deal right now. That Revo STX is a no-brainer. It's a centripetal brake, just like Kip was talking about with the Shimanos, but it's adjustable on the exterior of the reel, which I really like. That you can adjust it on the side plate there by turning that dial. You don't have to open the reel up to adjust the pins. And that thing's distance caster. So if you're looking for a chunk and wine type reel, all around kind of bang for your buck reel at a good price, that's a good one tonight. $159.99 on the Revo STX. And lastly, in this category, I want to talk about, where is it hiding? It's all the way up front there. Can you grab it for me, Kip, there? This is the Okuma Hakai. One of the reasons why we did this podcast was I wanted to talk about some reels like this. So I've been doing my research, like I said, on reels that are under, or that $200 and under price point from different manufacturers. I was doing a little research out there on reels, and I've came across this one. And this is an Okuma reel, which I'll be honest, not a manufacturer that I frequent. I haven't bought a lot of Okuma reels in my time. Not really knowledgeable on their whole lineup or anything like that. But this particular reel was coming in at weights of $300 reels and up. It's under 6 ounces, in the mid fives, I believe, for weight. And it features an aftermarket Japanese spool. So the reel itself is manufactured in China, but the spool is manufactured in Japan and made by a Japanese spool manufacturer named Dream Fishing. So they manufacture these spools you can buy for Shimano's, Daiwas, usually the reels people are buying aftermarket parts for. They make it in this reel. For this reel, from the factory, you get this spool. And I took this thing outside when we got it here because I requested we brought these in. Jacob, our buyer, fought me on it a lot. And I proved that he was wrong. immensely because we sold them out. So I want that pointed out by everybody who frequents our site regularly that I know more than Jacob. This thing casts like a rocket, and it's super light and it's small. I like the knobs on it. It's kind of got bulbous knobs at the end. All we have left right now is left hands in it, so don't skewer me on this if you're looking to purchase one right now. They sold out company-wide all over the place after they came out. I think this is going to be one of the hottest reels in the market here over the next year or two because of the price and what you're getting for the money. Lightweight, casts like a rocket. Super big fan of this thing.
Do you know what the frame's made out of?
I believe it's actually magnesium.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
I don't want to misspeak, but
Yeah.
for that price, I mean, the Hyper Mag used to be the best bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Magnesium reel.
Mm-hmm.
That thing blows it away.
It's pretty crazy what this thing is. I've only thrown it in the parking lot here and in the shop. So I have not open water fished with it. It was frozen when I got this thing. But I just going to say a 1/2 ounce jig on it, way too big a braid. I don't remember if it was 30 or 50 pound. It was something we had laying around here. I was not knocking this thing pretty easy. Like with the break up, like halfway, I could throw it to the knot on the spool. So pretty fired up about these. I actually already ordered a few of them for the ones that are coming in that I will be taking home and fishing on some new rods that I'm trying out this year. So I will give a full report on these soon. But as far as
Jacob says Pete's right. And then Jason's wondering how's the braking system on those?
The Akuma?
Yeah. It's
really simple. It's actually something you're seeing a lot of the manufacturers do. They hid the brake underneath the side plate here. I wish I could get up closer right now, guys. I'm sorry I can't. I got the headphones on, but the side plate's got a circular side to it inside the kind of that low profile style, but it's got that circular side plate. The bottom part of the circle has the actual brake dial. You just adjust it through the numbers. I believe this is magnetic. I don't think it's centripetal and magnetic like a Daiwa where the inductor kind of jumps out as you're casting, but wild reel here. It's actually got ball bearings at the end of the pinion shafts. If you want to nerd out on reels, do some research on this. You'll see what I'm talking about, but pretty unique spool system on this reel right here. And I suggest trying one if you want to get outside of the realm of just the two big Japanese manufacturers or whatever else has been popular. I think Okuma made a big splash of this one here. But I don't want to stick too long on the bang for your buck stuff because
let's get to the fun stuff.
Let's get to some fun stuff. Yeah, you got it. So specialty reels. I know Kip's got some of the older reels that he's been collecting, like the Core over here I just saw.
Yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. But there's some reels out there that have been made for specific applications. We're seeing that happen. I had it in my hand here earlier. I'll grab it again here. This is the Lose Skip and Pitch right here. This is the Pro SP, they call it. I already, once again, bought a few of these. I'm going to be using these for flipping and pitching applications this year, trying these out. These come in at a $199 price point. That one's the Super Duty there. But this one has got an orange spool in it. It's kind of indicated by the orange spool and a black frame. There it is. Perfect. That one right there is the Lose Skip and Pitch. It's got a super shallow spool. I don't know if you can tell from that picture there, but they actually groove the spool in the middle just to get your line knot to bury in there because it's so shallow that your backing knot or your knot could actually affect about half the line you got on the reel because it's such a shallow spool. It's got a super aggressive brake in it that actually has levels in it for skipping. I'm not probably going to skip this thing a ton. I've not to brag or anything like that, but I've got an educated thumb. I kind of skip with a looser reel, but I'm really excited about trying this one right here specifically for those pitching and skipping applications because once again, I did actually get some time in the fall with this reel, and that's what really impressed me with it to the point where I bought a few more to give it a shot for a full season and kind of beat on them and see how they do. It's actually for flipping. I really like how tiny this thing is. I mean, this thing is smaller than probably even my Steez CT. It's a tiny little reel, and it makes it really nice for the flipping and pitching all day long. It's got a bigger end reverse in it and a little bit tougher drag too, because it's designed specifically for that. So I'm looking forward to trying this thing out quite a bit. I know Kip's heard me talk about this thing a ton. I've brought it around you a bunch.
Oh, absolutely.
But the Shimano Corrado DC, I brought that one up, and I want Kip to talk about that one a little bit, because this isn't, I didn't put in the price point ones because it's up there in that 250 range. Yeah. But can you explain a little bit about the features, about why everybody's buying the hell out of those things?
Sure. So DC reels, you can go kind of two directions. They can cast a mile, but if you really crank down settings on it, it'll help you skip and stuff as well. So in Shimano, they have, as far as I know, two different DC braking systems. They have the IDC4, which the Corrado DC has, and they have the IDC5, which is in like the Metanium DC. The Scorpion DC has it, but essentially what that is, the IDC4, you get a little dial on the side of your reel, and all this is it indicates what kind of line you're using. So I'm gonna get this wrong here.
You got it. Braid by PE.
I know. No, it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, gotcha.
And so that's why it always messes me up. But I want to say 1 is just maximum distance, 2 is mono and braid, 3 is fluorocarbon, and then 4 is maximum brakes. Could be slightly off on that, so fact check me there. But the difference between this and IDC5 is the IDC5, you actually pick the line you're using on the inside of the
spool, the side plate?
Yes.
Take the side plate off.
So you take the side plate off, and on the inside, you'll see like P. They actually have letters, PE, Power Brake or Power Pro, mono, and fluorocarbon. You pick it there, and then your dial on the outside is just like any other Shimano you've used. You're just adjusting the strength of the brakes then.
Gotcha.
So for me, the IDC5, I've had a couple Metanium DCs, a lot more user-friendly, just more adjustments that you can make and really dial in your reel. But for the price, a Corrado DC is pretty tough to beat.
Yeah. And the reason why I put it in that specialty category is because it is kind of unique in the fact that it's got that digital braking system at that $250 price point. But I will tell you, and Kip's exactly right. There are Shimano fans that actually prefer the way that skips over even the SV style spools from Shimano or from Daiwa. But that thing for power fishermen, for like chunk and winders, casting long distance, throwing a trap, throwing a spinner bait, throwing a swim jig, throwing a bladed jig, has become almost like the staple for that kind of presentation. As far as volume goes, really nobody's going to argue that thing's not just a 10 out of 10. If you want to spend $250, if you're buying the reel just straight cast and wind and not worry about backlash, not worry about the wind, not worry about what line you got on, just go throw and baits and cover in water. That's where that thing comes into play. I think it's probably the leader in that category for specialty of power fishing reels, of just straight cover in water.
Quickly, if I could touch on it, I don't know that I actually explained what DC means.
Yeah.
It stands for a digital chip. So inside of the reel, there's a computer reading the revolutions of your spool. So for things where you're casting into the wind, skipping, or maybe you just need a little help with your backlashes, this reel is going to get the job done for you.
Where does the SLX fit in? So like when I was always selling or helping people here, like me, more on the novice side of not really knowing the specific technology, but DC and SV helping you prevent backlashes, basically. But now that they came out with that SLX DC, where do you think that fits in, or should people still be going for that?
So that's a really good point, actually. The SLX DC has the exact same braking system as the Corrado DC. It's the IDC4. So if you're looking for just straight performance and you don't want to fork up the extra $60-$70, I think, between the SLX and the Corrado, The SLX is going to be an awesome reel.
What do you think the major difference is? What would make you buy the Corrado over the SLX?
It's the frame. The frame is more sturdy on the Corrado. It's just built a little bit more heavy duty. You're going to feel a little bit of mush in the SLX DC.
Gotcha.
If you're flipping with it and stuff like that, but for treble hooks, lighter line, it's a great reel.
On that note, there's something I wanted to bring up earlier. One of the most common questions I get with Tatulas, we get it here a ton, is what's the difference between the new SV103 from Daiwa and then the older school Tatula that you see still on our site and they still manufacture. I wanted to bring it up because Kip just brought it up there with the SLX and the Corrado. They're both the same price point. I like the frame shape and the size and the weight of the new SV103 a lot more than I like the older one. But the older one has an aluminum gear side plate, so it's not as mushy, just like Kip said. And I mean that in the sense of if I'm running 65-pound braid on a frog or 50-pound braid flipping and I set the hook and I'm cranking as hard as I can, you can feel the reel kind of squish around a little bit. Does that mean that you're not going to land that fish or the reel's breaking? No, not always. I've actually got a bunch of old SV103s that are a couple years old now that I've ran over pretty hard, have fished pretty good, that none of them have broken from it. But it is disconcerting when you feel them when you're cranking that they get all squishy like that. And a lot of people prefer that more solid metal feel of a reel. Mm-hmm. So that's a good point on the Corrado DC there. Specialty. I also need to bring up, I don't have it out here, but the Revo Rocket. The Revo Rocket is Abu Garcia started this whole deal with that's it there, the 10 gear ratio reels of covering water super fast. We've seen Daiwa kind of dip their toe in the market a little bit with some of the zillions in the 10 gear. I've seen all the manufacturers jump into 9s a little bit, even here and there. But right now, I would say most people equate speed with this Revo Rocket. There are anglers who prefer having that super high speed reel for covering water and those flipping and pitching techniques. I think it makes them more efficient of an angler. Bait's hitting the bottom, didn't get a bite, reel that bait right back up, make another cast. By the end of the day, you've made hundreds, if not, dozens and dozens and dozens more casts or more flips with that 10 1-to-1. And it's funny because you hear that and you kind of think like, yeah, whatever. We put line on. We have one right now, line on it, and we all laugh like crazy because we have line on a bunch of reels here, and we just fire them around the warehouse. It feels like it takes 4 cranks on that thing, and that bait's actually going to come back and crack you in the ankle. It's coming across the floor so fast. It is insanely fast. And once again, we got a deal on those. Brad, I don't remember what the price is right now on the Revo Rockets.
I just posted. Let me see.
We got a deal on those.
$249.
Yeah, $249 instead of, I believe,
$319.
$319. Yeah. So good deal on the Revo Rocket. If you're looking for a specialty reel for that flipping and pitching technique, I do think it's a good gear ratio for frogging. Honestly, I don't think you need to have I think that speed helps you frogging a lot. To me, the reason why with frogging is I tend to always want to throw a frog when there's somehow a 15-mile-an-hour wind blows and I got a bow in my line and my frog's trying to work across pads and it always seems to have a bow in it. To have that speed to just, if I got a bite, just pick it up and crack them would be great. So that one there, I did mark down. We're out of them right now. Daiwa doesn't have any either. We're waiting on more shipments. But the Elite Pitch and Flip, the Tatula Pitch and Flip, that's an aluminum gear side. So it's that metal feel with that same frame shape as the new one. Yep, that's it right there for a big knobs on it, 100-millimeter handle, bigger drag. That's a great flipping and pitching reel. Doesn't come in that excessive speed like the Rocket does, but does get up to 8 1-to-1. And those things have been absolutely fire for us as far as sales. We sell those like crazy. I did list the Tatula Elite as well, which is just a long distance caster. It's right there. It's a aluminum gear side plate again, casts like a rocket. Everything different than I was saying about Tatula SV. This one gets a little bit more squirrely on you. So if you don't have that educated thumb, you want to stick with that SV. if you do have an educated thumb, you're going to get a lot of distance out of that reel. I've won a bunch of casting contests that reel, to be honest with you. So that thing is a chucker. Next category I wanted to get into was fancy. This is
That's where Pete lives.
Yeah. So
and Kip.
yeah, and Kip. What do you got? You got a Bantam there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So Bantam has found a home in my arsenal, more than most of my other reels. I've got a handful of these now. The one downfall of them is that they're a little heavy, but I mean, you can get over that. It's like a 3-piece, super solid reel. That's one of the big selling points on it. It's a 3-piece reel, excluding the handle. When other reels tend to be 5 or 7 main pieces, somewhere on there. But it's super solid. Like if there's, you talked about the mushy feeling of the Tatula SV. There's absolutely zero of that with the Bantam. So I use it for techniques where I'm going to be grinding on my reel. So frogging, it's my favorite frogging reel. Punching, I throw crankbaits on it. It's just found a home in my arsenal, but that's probably one of my favorites.
That's I can tell you around here, I've been trying to get myself to buy another Shimano here for a while here at the shop. I tell these guys about it all the time. I'm really digging that little Corrado 70, so I think I might try that little tiny thing. I'm into little tiny reels right now. But that Bantam is absolutely one of the best shaped reels I've seen. It feels like a piece of bar stock aluminum, which I believe it is actually. I think it's machined out of bar stock aluminum. It just feels like it's the closest thing to feeling like those old metal round reels you had from like the Calcuttas and the Lunas and like really metal hardcore feeling reels, but it's small and it's palmable. It's a really cool reel. What is the price point on those? What are those run?
These are $349. This is the old one. The new one I think is staying at that same price. They did make a pretty big improvement. One of the other complaints with this reel is that the line guide is very close to the spool.
Gotcha.
So it's hard to explain, but if you reel in your bait and you go to make a cast, you engage your reel, and your line guide is on one extreme side of the reel, and your line obviously has to go back and forth when it's casting. When it is on the opposite side, it has to make this sharp angle to get out of your reel. And that could cut down on casting a little bit. Honestly, I haven't noticed it. But the new one, they moved that line guide out a little bit further, so those angles aren't as drastic.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I would say the counterpart to that from the other big Japanese manufacturer is the Zillion. So last year, probably, if you guys follow any of our content at all, this was the reel I probably talked about the most. I got a couple of these last year. I actually got 3. This was my favorite reel dye was done in a long, long time. It's a much smaller in hand than it looks like in pictures, or that does it justice. You'd see that from a lot of reviews people have said that when you actually put them in your hand, they're really small. They're very metal feeling solid, but they're light too. These are really lightweight, super lightweight reels with aluminum side plates on them. So they feel like tanks. They do feature the SV spool, but they feature a new version of the SV spool called the Boost spool. So SV Boost, basically what it does is using centripetal force, it pushes the magnets out close to the side plate to slow the reel down. But with the Boost spool, it gives the spring 2 stages. So it'll actually, as the reel reaches maximum speed and starts to slow down, it'll pop the inductor back a little bit more and get the magnets further away from the spool and give you extra distance. Because divers are so over-braked to give you all that control, it kind of hinders you in that long distance casting. This reel came up with a new technology to actually prevent it from slowing you down on those longer casts that you've snapped out there. So I could get some way better distance than I could typically out of an SV spool. And these come in at that $350 price range too. And I think if I wasn't trying my mission of not being bougie this year, I would have probably bought a couple more of these. I was absolutely blown away by the performance of these. I personally think right now in Daiwa's lineup, this is the highlight. This reel right here is smooth. It's really smooth. And it is lightweight, it's compact, and it can do just about anything. It can skip with the best reels on the market, and it can throw distance-wise, not as far as some, but as far as you need to throw it, and do it problem-free. Like, I might not have backlashed one of these last year, and that's saying a lot. I screw up a lot. I can't think of a time I picked line out of any one of my zillions last year, so that's a big one to talk about. That Bantam and that Zillion are high performers, $350 reels. The other one I wanted to point out was one that is a surprise to me for volume of sales, and that is the Lose Hypermag. The Lose Hypermag. This thing is tiny and light. As most of you know, with the Lose reels, they are really small. Yep, that's it there. I see those wind grips, and I've always seen them as I was selling reels throughout my life and seen them on there. And I just like, whoa, no, that ain't me. That ain't me. Till you actually use them. And I've got a couple friends. We've got Joe Panessa that works here. He's our digital merchandiser. He swears by these knobs. A friend of ours, of us here at Omnia, Rob Store, he was telling me, oh, man, I love those round knobs. I could not wrap my head around it from afar. Now that I've been playing with them a bunch, I'm starting to get it a whole bunch. They absolutely are. They're light, and they feel really, really comfortable, and you can see how grippy they are if you're doing any power fishing techniques. This as well comes in at like that $350 price range, I believe. Really lightweight, magnesium reel. These, I've seen Jason Christie just on a tear lately. Like 3 tournaments or 2 tournaments in a month or two span, the Classic, and I think what did he just win? Chickamauga? No, what did he win?
Yes, it was Chickamauga.
Was it?
I'm getting them all mixed up.
I'm getting them all mixed up too.
I'm pretty sure.
But he's been on a tear, just catching them like crazy. But he's throwing all hyper mags. He really uses these for everything from chunking and winding a spinnerbait to flipping a jig, pitching, flipping techniques, skipping, all that. These things feel really solid, and they're super light. And if I wasn't aiming for under $200, I'd probably get a couple of these. I want to try them really bad. But I'm going to leave these to Joe Panessa, our guy here, to be the Lose guy on the higher end. I'm going to be trying, like I said, those skipping pitches, and actually one of their other reels called the Custom Pro, which comes in about a $179 price point, I think, this year. Myself, I think for high performance, actually, I did want to bring up another Shimano there. Do you have the Metanium out here?
I sure do. That's Metanium is probably my favorite line. Like I said, I've had the Metanium DCs. Had the 2013 Metanium, the 2016 Metanium was probably my favorite reel. And now the 2020 came out a couple years ago, and it's just as good. It's a lot smaller than the past years. So the 2013 frame and the 2016 frame were the same. Pretty big reel, actually. Still light, but big. They shaved a bunch off of this reel, and it's still super light. The other big upgrade that they made is in previous years, they had an aluminum gear, and we've had conversations where Shimano's aluminum gears are a little iffy, and I like to throw jigs on my Metaniums, so that Texas rigs, and so I would be wrenching on them a little bit, and they've gotten a little bit geary, but the 2020 Metanium has a brass gear in it.
Nice.
So big upgrade for the U.S. market, where we like to crank on fish, and there's no real finesse to it with big casters. So yeah, it's got the brass gear, 150 MGL spool. With this spool, they actually made it deeper than a standard 150, but narrowed it. So like we were talking about earlier with your line going from one side to the other and having to go through the line guide, making a narrower spool, it's all kind of in one line now. The line doesn't go back and forth as much. So you get a bomb cast out of it too. But I'm going to have a jig tied on this pretty much all year.
It's funny you bring up that brass gear thing. That happens across all manufacturers, by the way. That's why I was pointing out kudos to the Doyo and some of the Korean manufacturers that have been kicking out really good high-end aluminum gears for a while, they've been holding up really well, and they're getting a lot of credit for that, and they should. Do your research on that, because even with this Zillion that I was talking about before, the U.S. domestic model has a brass gear in it because of the fact that those aluminum gears don't usually stand up to the punishment of heavier lines, power fishing techniques, really hard hook sets, and grinding on the gears as you're fighting a fish the way we tend to do here in the States, where we set the hook and use the reel to get the fish into the boat. Those brass gears do hold up a little bit better. They're a little softer and more forgiving. They don't tend to ding up as easy as aluminum gears. I do want to, do we have any questions at all on casting reels? Just remember, guys, if you get any questions about any of the casting reels at all, make sure you shoot out questions, because we are giving away a gift card for $50 for good questions tonight. We're going to have Brad pick out some winners, but we're going to shift the conversation over to spinning reels now.
Let's do it.
We sell more spinning reels than any other type of reel. We sell a lot of spinning reels. It's the most commonly used reel in the world of fishing. They come in a variety of price points. Again, it's a little simpler and not as complicated as bait casters are on what you're getting. Yeah, what's that?
Not as fun.
It's not as fun because kind of everybody uses a spinning reel, but it's creates good argument. And is there justification in going to those really high end spinning reels? I think the latest trend that we'll get into a little bit is why are we conditioned to run little small spinning reels, the lightest ones you can? Is there advantages to that or disadvantages? But I wanted to start when it comes to spinning with price point. I would say our best seller to date has been the Daiwa Revros, which comes in at about $50. That's been a great reel for us, volume wise. The Linders talk about this reel all the time. They've taken this reel all over the entire northern part of the United States for years now and fished them on $300 St. Croix rods. It's a $50 reel. And all the ones they got originally are still all running. These things are honestly one of the arguments for why do you spend a ton of money on a spinning reel. This reel, I wholeheartedly believe, is just as durable as any $150 spinning reel on the market. I'll say that hands down. It's a little heavier. It's not as smooth, but it still is really smooth, and the drag's great in it. So as far as price point goes, and for our customers speaking, that would be your best bang for the buck reel from Omnia's standpoint. Now, I only say that that's the winner as far as volume sales because we just recently added the Pfluger President, which is probably all time the best-selling price point spinning reel on the market, in my opinion. Maybe the Shimano Sedona caught it there for a couple of years, but the Pfluger President over the last, 15 years has got to have it licked by a mile. I also know Brad Novak got one of these. How many years ago, Brad?
It was probably 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
And I still got this. I still use the same one. I mean, this is still in my lineup today. And like you said, Pete, like with bait casters, you get a cheap one, and then you move up to a slightly higher end one, and you can really tell a difference. With spinning, like I feel like you just can't. Like weight is a factor.
There's an argument to what you're saying. You're right.
But with as long as the drag doesn't skip, it's smooth. I mean, it's all you could ever want. So I have 4 more of these.
There you go. I can tell you right now what Brad's saying there. I've got friends that are world-class anglers. I can tell you, if you guys look at some of the finishes Brandon Lester on the Elite Series has had with the spinning reel, he uses those Revroses I was talking about, $50 reels. I've seen world-class anglers that I admire a ton that are much better anglers than I hope to be half as good as those guys are someday in my life. Use $60 and down spinning reels all the time and do just fine. Now, I will tell you at the same time, not to get too extreme to the other end, but I've got friends that fish for a living that fight smallmouth on rivers and stuff like that, that swear up and down there's nothing more worth it than having at least 1 or 2 super fancy spinning reels to fight those kind of fish. And because, you know, those fish, that one fish for them could be a $10,000 fish. I get that argument as well. But if you're, you know, not fishing for a living, it's really hard to justify going really high end on spinning reels unless you're a super tackle junkie. Like Kip over here, who happens to have one of his favorite spinning reels next to him. That's the Shimano
Accents, yep.
Yep.
So being in Minnesota, we have fairy wands in our hand a lot of the year.
Yep.
We got spinning rods in our hand a lot. So for me, I can justify spending a little bit of extra money on something that's enjoyable to use, super smooth drag, lightweight. And for me, thinking about, you know, oftentimes I'm using 10-pound line to an 8-pound leader. So I want the smoothest drag that I can get when I'm throwing a spinning reel. And for me, at least in Shimano's spinning reels, this is about as smooth as it gets. You jump up to the Stella, but this is lighter and it's got just as smooth of a drag, in my opinion. So
yep. I've got an interesting opinion on this as well. I actually am that jerk. I have an Exist. I have a few Certates. I have some really high end spinning reels. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I'm, you know, and it is due to a lot of the fishing I actually get to do the most on my own in my own boat. I'm just not using them enough to justify that kind of spend myself. I've found myself being just as efficient and having just as much success using like the Tatula LT here, which this is my personal reel here. It's got line on it. We were shooting some stuff a few weeks ago. It's been still sitting here. I found this to be kind of my sweet point, that like $180 price point, $189 price point. By the way, this reel's coming in at weights just as light as the really high end stuff, like Kip's Shimano there. The Certates, it's actually lighter than the Certates I was talking about that are $500 plus reels. It doesn't have as nice a drag, and that is true. The drags on those super high end reels are unbelievable, but I haven't suffered losing a $10,000 fish yet or a $100,000 fish to the point where I can justify continuing to buy those really super high end ones. So as far as breaking spinning reels up in categories, when I think bang for the buck, I go with what our consumers have kind of told us. Because I think spinning's a more easy story to let the consumers tell you, because they tend to not buy as many super high end bait cast or spinning reels, I'm sorry, as they do bait casters. Yep. So the Daiwa Fuego has been our bang for the buck, highest selling reel, which currently, yes, if you go look for one right now, we are out of stock. We're hoping to fix that here shortly. We got lots of orders in for those, but I just want to be honest with you guys. There is $100, hard to beat those things for the weight and the price point. They are absolutely high volume sellers. But what I wanted to take this opportunity to do is point out some sleepers, in my opinion.
Before we do that, let's jump into a couple questions.
Go ahead.
I believe this is a Shimano technology, but Doug wants to know, what do you think of the spinning reel with the quick fire feature? I don't quite.
Yeah, I think it is. The Spyrex has it. Yeah. I actually grew up fishing those when I was a kid.
It explains a lot.
My dad had them, and so I would use them. They're not my favorite anymore. Just the point of them was to reel, and then when you were ready to make a cast, you would back reel, and
the stopper would stop it at the top position.
Yeah, and then there's a trigger where you pull it. And for me, there's too many moving parts. Those triggers would tend to break. So I don't prefer them, but there's definitely a market out there that does.
I will tell you this. I sold those things for a long time. They were really popular for a period of time when there was a lot of people starting, especially, I honestly, what I think really revolutionized those things is when that leap from live bait fishing in the north started to grow into some artificials. People were trying to throw lures and fish artificials a lot more. So the leap to a bait caster was really tough for a lot of people. So Shimano was the first one to really kind of do a good job of making a spinning reel more efficient at casting and doing a power fishing techniques, and that trigger reel being able to back up to that top position to get your line at the top of the reel was a cool feature. If you fish a lot, you go on a few trips a year and you don't want to get used to using a bait caster, that reel was awesome. It caught a lot of people, a lot of big fish, and I have no hate on that reel whatsoever for what it was built for. If you're gonna start casting artificials all the time and doing it all the time, a bait caster is much more efficient. They twist your lineup a lot less. The anti-reverse goes out in those trigger reels because of the back bang on the anti-reverse stopper. It twists your lineup a lot more because you tend to close the reel with the handle, those double handles on those. You close the bail and you twist your lineup a lot more, which is just a simple feature. If you're not familiar with spinning reels at all, if you haven't fished with them much, one of the hardest habits to break for a spinning reel angler is to not close the bail with the handle and start reeling. You take loose line and you wrap it around your reel a couple times before it actually tightens your line up and puts it on properly. You want to try and get in the habit of knocking that bail over with your hand because it takes the line right into the roller of the reel before you start reeling so that there's actually tension on the line for the first wraps going around. So if you ever wonder when you're fishing sometimes and you're casting and closing the bail like this, why you all of a sudden end up with these loops of line that are sticking out of your reel, a lot of times that's from wrapping loose line around your reel and then wrapping tight line over the top of that loose line. So great, thing to point out. Those Spyrexes, those trigger style reels, if you're going to make a couple trips a year and you don't want to get used to using a bait caster, go get one. Buy it, go fishing, go catch fish, have a blast. If you're going to fish a lot more often than a couple trips a year, get used to a bait caster. You'll be happy you did it.
Okay, now I think this is a Shimano reel as well, but Jason wants to know, do you have any experience with the new version of the NASCI?
NASCI, yep. I don't have any experience with the new one. I think it looks a lot better. It looks more sleek. I think one feature I'm familiar with is that a lot of the new Shimano spinning reels, they're going from that collapsible handle to a full one-piece handle. And in my opinion, immediately that makes it feel a little bit more solid. Yeah. So I think that's probably a big step up. But I know the Nazis
I like my collapsible.
I didn't mean to throw shade on you there. But they're saltwater rated. They look cool. I don't have any experience with them though.
Cool.
That brings me to the reels that I want to talk about that I think are kind of sleepers out there and the best bang for the bucks that may not have gotten the sales volume. I think some of these is because of what we went through with the supply chain, them launching at a horrible time to ship product and get things manufactured and get into stores. And some of it's just because they're that new or haven't gotten the marketing thunder in a while. And that is one of them being the Shimano Ultegra Ci4. I think this reel is, one, it's really pretty. It's kind of got like a navy blue kind of paint job to it and some gold features on it. It's very old school looking, but I'm getting old. Looks kind of cool. It's got their kind of long throw spool on it. Their what is it called? Their long stroke spool. Sorry. It's got that machine lip on it at an angle for casting distance, but this is actually a Ci4 body on these things. And I believe they're coming in, I want to say 159?
164.
164. Okay, so Kip was wrong.
Check the 2500 size.
Yeah. It's
You're right.
Yeah, 150 what?
154 and 164.
Yeah, so Kip was right. All right. So shame on me. But I think that reel feels solid as a rock and absolutely beautiful for the money, right? It really does. I've grown accustomed being a Daiwa guy for as long as I've been to the bigger, fatter, more positive feel of the bales of a bigger bale system on like the Daiwas. So I've been kind of eyeing up these guys on my quest for under 200. We'll call them the twins here. This is the new Pfluger Supreme and the new Pfluger Supreme XT. All we have in these right now, and it's literally not on purpose, that's what we got shipped so far, is all 35 sizes, which brings up another topic. I like bigger spinning reels. I don't know why anybody wants to run a small spinning reel anywhere. I get it why you do, how we all got conditioned to that, but bigger spinning reels cast further, balance out rods better, have better drags, have better line management. They pick up a lot more line faster. There's all these advantages to fishing a bigger spinning reel that I don't think you can grasp with me talking to you till you try one and you do it. I've heard Kip and Nick talking about this in our CSR office there. You try a big spinning reel and you actually fish with it for a little bit, it's hard picking up a little guy again and trying.
Yeah. When I first started here, I was running all 3000s, and I was talking with Jacob and Nick, and they were running all 4000s. You guys are crazy.
Yeah.
And I bought one, and it never looked back. Like you said, the line management, was big for me. And the thing is, a 4000, especially with like a Vanford or a Tatula LT, a 4000 in one of those reels weighs almost the same as a 3000 did 5 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, for a lot of the people that have never fished a reel bigger than 2500, I'll bet you that the new 4000s are lighter than any of your old 2500s. I mean it. Like these things are light. This is a 8.6 ounce reel, I want to say. It might even be lighter than that. I think I might be off on that.
What's that, the XT or the regular?
The XT. It might be even in the 7s, right? Or what is it? I can't remember.
Says was that the 35?
35.
Let's look. 7.6.
7.6 ounces. That's what I meant. 7.6 ounces on this. This reel is on sale, by the way. What's it marked down to, Brad? For
$135.95.
$135.95. This is actually, once again, magnesium frame. You're getting a magnesium frame spinning reel under $150 right now, and this is, like I said, it's 7.6 ounces. I can balance out a 7-foot plus rod better with this reel than I can with any 2500 that you can buy right now. And I get the added advantage of having better line management, quicker line pickup. And you got to remember something with that quicker line pickup. When you're using a spinning rod, most of the time you fight a fish with a spinning rod, you fight the fish with your rod, not with the reel. The bait caster, you tend to set the hook and then use the reel to try and get leverage on to get that line back from that fish and reel them in. Kind of the old school bass fishing way of doing it. With a spin-in reel, you tend to set the hook and then let that rod clean up line with your reel, but let the rod fight the fish. So having that extra line pickup is just nothing but a massive advantage. I can keep my rod bent over and pinned no matter where that fish is in the fight while I'm fighting that. If it's a smallmouth rocking into the surface in 20 foot of water, I can just make simple reels like this and keep my rod bent over and fighting that fish all the way up. So I keep positive contact on it with the rod. The Supreme is basically a little bit heavier version of the Supreme XT. They're both, one's an 11 ball bearing. I want to believe one's 10 ball bearing. But the regular Supreme here, this one comes in at like 8.2 ounces.
Damn, right on the money.
Yeah, it's a little bit heavier than the XT, but this thing's only like $99 right now. What is it? $95.95. And you're looking at a reel that weighs what a 2500 from Shimano and Daiwa weighed 5-10 years ago. Pretty incredible weights, and they're bigger spinning reels. So look for some reports from me in the field on running some of the bigger reels that are not from Daiwa or Shimano on those guys. The last one I want to point out, my sneakies there. You want to grab that Hyper Mag at the very end up there, up the front. This was a surprise today that just showed up. I think one of my buddies hooked me up to make sure these got shipped out to us. So these have been gone like crazy. And I mean that. Like, if you would have told me, just because of my own biasness and time in the industry, that Luz would have a spinning reel that you can't keep on the shelf, I would be like, you're nuts. Because Luz, to me, has been just kicking butt in bait casters. but haven't been able to kind of find their groove when it comes to spinning tackle. Man, it's this thing this thing's going to blow your mind if you're not familiar with luge and spinning. Like, I knew this thing existed, but I never picked it up and actually played with it or whatever. It really was actually just learning by sales metrics when we would sit in meetings. We turn these things every time we get them, and I'm like, well, it's just because there's a lot of luge fans out there. Then I started playing with them here and talking to some friends that fish with them, including Mr. Zona there, who's telling me like crazy, wait till you try that Hypermag. This is $169 retail, and it's a magnesium framed reel. It's got an awesome little knob on it. It's super smooth. This thing is light as can be, and it's really trick looking. I really think it's a beautiful reel for the money. What's blowing me away is how many we've sold already. And we were told they were going to be out till later this summer, that they'd kind of gone already through the batches, but I just got a surprise today. They just showed up. So.
We haven't put them in the system yet, have we?
No, I think they're still over there on the loading dock. I saw them actually and grabbed them to show people.
Restock notifications set up.
Yeah, set them up because I'll bet you see some going tomorrow morning. But thank you to our buddy that hooked us up with those, because they are absolutely nice. So if you're, once again, like me, trying to not just kind of go with just the most popular ones, you want to try some different stuff, I will bet you that Hypermag will impress you. I will be running one this summer and giving feedback on those. I would say next, real quick, I'm going to run over the most popular spinning reels we have, just so we're forgetting price points, we're forgetting features, just like straight up, what do we kick out the door? What do most spinning hardcore anglers buying lots of spinning tackle buy? And that would be by volume. And I'm saying this because we've gotten more of them. It's the Tatula LT that I spoke about earlier. I think if we got enough, I think this one would give it a run for its money, or maybe even be a bigger seller because we sell them all super fast. That is the, no surprise, Shimano Vanford. The Shimano Vanford, Kip, you want to go over some of the features of that guy there?
Sure. So the Vanford replaced the Stratic Ci4 Plus.
Controversial topic.
It is, because that's one of the best-selling reels at that price point, probably ever.
Yeah.
And then they changed the name to Vanford and ditched the Ci4 part. It's still a Ci4 frame, so it's still super light. They integrated the long stroke spool again. So that was a technology that they took from the Stella. Now pretty much all of their competitive reels have them. But it's super lightweight. The drag is pretty smooth. I've had a couple of the 4000s, which I think are like 7.6 ounces as well. And they're smooth. I've been accustomed to some higher end reels that have smoother drags, but for the price, they're pretty tough to beat. And this comes at around $229.99.
Yeah, I think so.
And I would actually say it competes a little bit closer to the Tatula LT. Like the Stratic and the Tatula LT are same price point.
Yep.
But this is roughly the same weight as the LT. I think they're just more comparable than the Stratic and the Tatula.
Gotcha. All right. So can't really go wrong with either one. If you're a diehard brand guy, which I've been in my past, and people, that work here, and there's no hate on that. If you're a diehard brand guy, Shimano guy or Daiwa guy, if you're on the fence, they're both really good options. The tool is maybe a little less expensive. But if one or the other's not available, I don't think you're getting shorted on either one of those purchases. The new player in that price point that we've burned through as they came in is the Ballistic MQ.
This one's cool.
Yeah. This one's a 4000. This thing is super light. I don't know the weight off the top of my head, so Brad's going to have to help me out here real quick. But the Ballistic MQ in the 4000 features their the MQ stands for monocoque, which means one body. So this is one single-bodied reel that does not have a side plate that you screw on. The actual main gear is much larger, so it's actually a little hard to look at the first time you look at it. It looks just absolutely massive, the main gear, but you're getting a gear set that has the power and the fluidity of like a 5,000-6,000 size spinning reel from the past in a smaller lightweight reel. You got the weight on that thing yet?
What size?
The MQ 4000.
4,000 is 8.1.
8.1 ounces. And this thing's absolutely butter smooth. The MQ reels have such big gearing in them that they just feel like machines. This thing is, I got $500 spinning reels and stuff. I think this thing is just as smooth as them. I honestly was not that excited when the Ballistic MQ came out. I figured I'd wait till we saw more of a price point, like a Tula MQ or something like that come out. And I've always liked their really super high end spinning reels. I might, as soon as I decide that I'm going to stop buying under $200 reels, try one of these because I'm a big fan of the MQ. I put it on that most popular because we've turned every single one we've landed fast, and they keep hooking us up, sending a few at a time, and they just go. And I think for most popular, Stratic FL. We sell a ton of the silver Stratic FL, which is, the staple from Shimano forever. I know some of my friends that work at even some of the other retailers around here in the cities claim that's still their favorite reel in Shimano's lineup as far as spinning goes. If you're not into all the super features of weight and all that stuff, especially if you're into the smaller size spinning reels, you're not so much into the big size spinning reels, and I can't talk you into trying that like me and Kip just were. That thing in a 2500 balances out a lot of longer rods, like 7 foot plus rods, and it is butter smooth and just a tank. It's been a proven workhorse.
And it's made from a heavier material than the Vanford. So with the Vanford, you can feel if there's a little bit of geariness or something with that lightweight reel. With a more solid reel like the Stratic FL, it like you said, it feels smoother.
Yeah, it does. It tends to feel a lot smoother. And the last portion of the spinning reel stuff that we were going to cover was like super fancy stuff, and that's like the Exist and the Stella. And you're looking at literally $700 to now $1,000 price points. So one that I got here to show you real quick, that if you're not looking to go that nuts, save some money, but get into those insanely lightweight, really high end. A little surprise here from Abu Garcia. We got some of these in. These are the Xenons. This one here is the 20 size. This is 5.3 ounces, they say this thing is. I know I saw some reports out there saying that the measured weight was actually like 5.6 ounces. So don't slaughter me if it's one of the other.
Our website says 5.4.
5.4.
So it's somewhere in there.
It's somewhere underneath 6.5 ounces. So this is really light. The gearbox is insanely small, which is hard for me to wrap my head around after just talking to you about how much I love giant gearboxes and all that power and torque. But these things are really smooth. I give Abu a lot of kudos for going after that kind of Japanese market of high-end spinning tackle and giving us another option. And it's crazy to think that $500 would be seeming like they're getting a price pointy on a high-end spinning reel, because a few years ago $500 was like the pinnacle of spinning reels, but now we've got $1,000 spinning reels for freshwater fishing. So kudos to Abu for making one in those kind of weight ranges that is half the price. Still super expensive. I've got no time on the water with this thing, but I've gotten some early reports from people that have fished with them that are very impressed with the drags. I can say that's probably, for me, for the high-end Abu stuff, probably the most underrated thing about their reels is their drags are really good, actually. They get a lot of props from their competitive anglers about how smooth the Abu drags are. That tends to always get all the credit goes to the Japanese reels on that, where the Japanese reels tend to get all everybody else's spinning reels is in gearing feel. The gearing feels much smoother in the Japanese reels, and they did something special. This one, it is really smooth. It's light. It doesn't wobble a lot when you spin it. This is a engineering feat by them, so kudos to Abu on that. But yeah, as far as categories go, if we go fancy, we went through kind of like our favorites and the price point stuff. most popular sales-wise. Spinning reels are a lot simpler, a lot less complex. I recommend if you don't have a high opinion on or a major opinion on spinning reels, get in around that $100 price point and you're going to be super happy. You'll have it for a long time. It's not going to break. You'll have it. It'll work. You'll catch fish. It'll have all the features you need around that price point. Even a little less, you'd be fine.
A lot of good options around there, too.
There is. And if you get competitive into angling and you want that, to step it up, there's no need in spinning to go over a couple $100. You get above that and you're literally talking, you better be able to justify it. To me anyway, I even own some. You got to justify it by you have that kind of disposable income. You're that hardcore into spinning tackle fishing. If you're had a cabin on Mille Lacs and you were smallmouth fishing every single weekend, yeah, go for it. Get a really high-end spinning reel. You'll be happy. But if you're like me and only get up there a few times a year, I'll do just fine with my Tatula LTs and maybe my Flugers or the Hyper Mags when I go up there this year. How about you, Brad? I see you got one more reel up there. You want to clue us into what that little peach is?
Oh, the Revo. Yeah, to go back to baitcasters. So my experience was with the $50 reel, right?
Yeah.
And then when I was really living good was when I think they still give it away, but Bass Nation, life members.
Oh, you got that?
So, I
thought you bought that
no,
thing.
I didn't even try it. And I was like, whoa, this is way better. So, yeah, that's my story on how I moved up a level of baitcasters.
You got a magazine subscription.
Yeah.
So you got a good baitcaster.
Yeah. I did have a question come through kind of going back to baitcasters.
Yeah.
David's wondering, do you recommend to new baitcasting guys that they use the same side retrieve as they used for spinning?
Ooh, controversial subject.
Super
controversial subject, Dave. Nowadays, because of the availability of left-handed reels, you asked me this question when I got into casting, it wasn't you were switching hands. That's the way you did it. Daiwa had a few options, and highest gear ratio, I think they did a lefty and was 6-3 to 1. It was more worth it to, most of us use a spinning reel, reeling with your left hand, baitcast with the right hand. I got used to using my body and my left arm to set the hook and my power arm to crank to fight a fish on a baitcaster. So when I pick up Seth's reels and I fish with him, he uses lefties, and I set the hook, I can fish with a left-handed reel like no problems. Watch me fight a fish, and you're going to be making fun of me the rest of the day. That's what I've dealt with for years, because I set the hook and I cannot use my other hand to fight the fish. I can't reel with my left hand on a baitcaster. Now, I know all lefty baitcaster people make fun of you because they say you do it with a spinning rod. No, I'm using the power of my right arm with a rod to fight the fish with the rod. And I just use that big, long, wide stroke of a spinning reel with my left hand. I'm using the rod to fight the fish. I'm not using my power in my left hand like I do with a baitcaster. So it's hard for me, but I think if you're new to baitcasters right now with the options of a left-handed reel, it kind of makes sense to just go with what you're already used to. If you're used to casting with your right arm and reeling with your left hand, get used to fishing with a baitcaster at left hand, in my opinion.
I would agree. I don't think it's a bad thing to have a couple of each either. I mean, if you're
ambidextrous enough, yeah.
Right. But I think you're a better fisherman if you can reel right-handed and left-handed.
And don't ask me, I'm weird.
What do you do?
Spinning rod, I put on the right side, and I'm a righty. And my dad was a lefty. He had their.
You're not weird. I got a lot of friends.
And so I cast and switch, and so I keep all of my handles are on the right side.
Yeah. I've got a lot of friends like you. Some of my best friends that are really good anglers, guides, all that stuff, do exactly what you do. Yeah. They take their spinning reel handles off, switch them around to the right side of the reel, and then they just cast their right hand and switch over to the rod in their left hand.
Yep. And so my casting arm is my right, but I will say when I started flipping and pitching, I made it a conscious effort to do it with my left.
I do the same.
Because I didn't want to switch when I was that close. So I do flip and pitch with my left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The moral of the story, I think, on this one is people have options now, and you should do what you're most comfortable with right out of the gate. Just so you enjoy your time on the water. Don't force yourself into anything, because anybody who tells you that you're less efficient or you suck at fishing because you use a right or a left-handed reel obviously hasn't watched Jason Christie, Kevin Van Dam. Everybody beat the brakes off everybody switching hands. Jacob Wheeler, even lots of guys that are just dominant in fishing do just fine switching hands. Use what you are comfortable with and what you enjoy fishing with. And now that you have all those options, if it makes an easier transition to not switch hands when using a bait caster, I suggest taking that part out and just you buy a left-handed bait caster if you're starting off, if you're using a spinning reel with your left hand. But other than that, do what makes you happy. You'll be just fine.
Yep. That's all we got, bud.
All right. Well, I want to thank Kip. Once again, Kip's our head of our CSRs here at Omnia. So his team make sure everybody's happy with their service levels they get. And he can answer lots of fishing questions. They're avid anglers. Really proud of the work those guys do. And thank you very much for coming on and sharing your Shimano knowledge with us.
It was a pleasure.
Brad, thank you for coming on and sharing all your cheapskate knowledge with us.
I appreciate it.
Funny thing is I'm chasing Brad down for trying to not overthink all this and spend too much on tackle and go into just like I said, I'll be reporting back throughout the year to you guys on some of the stuff I found that is more price point orientated stuff that I think all the manufacturers offer other than just the typical stuff that I've run. But thank you, Brad, for coming on. And last but not least, got to thank Fergus over there for running the board. First live stream for Matt.
Hey-o.
Good job, Matt. The new software has been punchy all week long, and he has done a great job of diving in and just going live with it and seeing how it goes. So thanks for Patrick Walters for standing us up. We'll get back to you later, buddy. And no, but Patrick's phone wasn't working, so we'll get with Patrick later on a different live stream, and we'll also have Seth in here soon to talk some different stuff. But any more questions about reels, go ahead and ask them. If you see this live stream the next day or two or whatever, we'll try and get back to you with any answers, and we'll reach out to any of the winners for the like and shares and the questions that were asked earlier. Thanks. Go catch them.